We need to talk about Argentina, not the football, the hate. Because right now, in the middle of the 2026 World Cup, one word is drowning every timeline, every group chat, every stadium chant that isn't being sung by an Argentine. Rigged. It's rigged. Every big call goes their way. Every soft foul. Every VAR overturn. Every whistle. And if you scroll for 10 seconds after any Argentina match, you don't see analysis. You see rage. You see accusations. You see the same question asked in 12 different languages, in 12 different accents, on every football corner of the internet. Why does the entire football world hate Argentina? That is the question this video is going to answer. Not a hot take, not a rant, a full breakdown. Because everybody hates Argentina is not something one bitter Egyptian journalist said in a losing press conference. It is a chorus. It is coming from Cape Verde fans who just watched their fairy tale get bled out over 90 minutes. It is coming from French supporters who never got over what happened in Qatar. It is coming from neutrals who used to love Messi. It is coming from Brazilian and Uruguayan and Colombian fan bases who have their own historical grudges dating back generations. It is coming from Africans watching an Egypt team get walked off the pitch by a referee's whistle. And is coming from something much older, too. A reputation Argentina has been building for 40 years and can no longer laugh off. Pause. If you're a neutral, you probably feel it and can't quite explain it. You just know that when Argentina lift a trophy, half the stadium goes quiet in a way it doesn't when anyone else wins. If you're an Argentine, you're exhausted. You're tired of hearing it, tired of being told your team gets favors you don't see, tired of every celebration being labeled as arrogance. If you're Brazilian, you already have an opinion, and you are here to have it confirmed. If you're French, you're waiting for someone to finally say out loud what your entire country whispered after that final. We're going to look at all of it. The 2026 refereeing pattern. The Emiliano Martinez incidents. The 2022 final that half the football world still refuses to accept. The Maradona hand of God. The Simeone stomp on Beckham. The chants. The mock celebrations. The Infantino reactions this tournament. And the one thing that Argentine fans keep saying in their own defense that actually has far more truth to it than anyone wants to admit. We are not going to answer whether the hate is deserved. That is not the point of this video. The point is why. Why is it happening now at this scale, at this volume, at a level no other reigning champion in modern football history has ever generated? Because it is not normal for the world champions of a sport to be booed by the neutral half of every stadium they walk into. That is not a Brazil thing. It is not a Germany thing. It is not a France or Spain or Italy thing. It is an Argentina thing. And it started long before Lionel Messi lifted that trophy in Qatar. So let me lay it out for you because this channel has spent the last 3 weeks watching every Argentina match of this tournament, going back through every relevant replay from the last 2 World Cups, and reading every credible article and interview coming out of the Argentine, French, Brazilian, and Egyptian press. And what we found is not a conspiracy. It is not FIFA sitting in a smoke-filled room deciding that Messi gets a second cup before he retires. It is worse than a conspiracy. It is a pattern. A pattern of small favors, small blind eyes, small technicalities, small moments of on-field arrogance that stacked over decades has created a global reputation Argentine fans can no longer wave away as jealousy. By the end of this breakdown, you're going to know exactly why every neutral on the planet is watching Argentina's remaining matches through gritted teeth. You're going to know the difference between what this Argentina team genuinely earns on the pitch and what the football world genuinely resents them for off it. And you are going to have your own opinion sharpened on whether the hate is jealousy, whether it is fair, or whether the Argentina national team has quietly become the most disliked footballing institution on the planet, even while wearing the crown. Stay to the end, because the last section, the part about what really happened between the whistles in the 2022 World Cup final, is going to change how you remember that trophy lift, whether you are Argentine or not. Let's start where the anger boiled over. Argentina versus Egypt, round of 16. 2026 World Cup. This is the match that flipped a slow-burning global frustration into a full-blown international incident. And to understand why the reaction was so violent, you need to understand what Egypt were actually doing on that pitch before the whistles started to matter more than the players. Egypt were beating the world champions. 2-0 up. Not a smash and grab. Not a fluke. A structured, disciplined, deliberate demolition of an Argentina midfield that had no answers. And it should have been 3-0. Because before the second half was even old, Egypt had already had a goal chalked off. A goal they scored in open play, celebrated, ran back for kickoff. Then VAR intervened. And when VAR intervened, it didn't just check the goal. It dragged the incident all the way back, minutes earlier in the build-up, to a challenge on Lautaro Martinez that most neutrals watching in real time did not even register as a foul. Watch it again. Martinez is shielding the ball, already off balance, already losing the duel. The Egyptian defender makes light contact on his toes. That's it. That's the entire incident. Martinez goes down. VAR flags it. The referee walks to the monitor. And an entire legitimate goal is erased from the scoreboard. Egypt back to being 1-0 up in a match they were controlling. Now hold that image in your head, because you're going to need it in about 90 seconds. Pause. 16th minute. Mohamed Salah gets fouled just outside the Argentina box. No whistle. Play on. Second half. An Argentine player collides directly into the Egyptian goalkeeper. No foul, no yellow card, nothing. Egypt still leading, still holding their line, still doing everything right. Then later, in the build-up to Argentina's equalizer, there are two moments the entire Egyptian bench pointed at. First, inside the Argentina attacking phase, an Egyptian defender gets his shirt visibly pulled back by Alexis Mac Allister. No VAR check. Play continues. Second, Salah himself gets tripped on his toes inside the same phase of play. A challenge that, if you froze it and put it side by side with the Martinez incident from the first half, is objectively heavier contact. Objectively. And is the exact type of challenge that got Egypt's goal cancelled. This one. No VAR check. No monitor visit. Nothing. Play on. Goal for Argentina. Referee jogs back to the halfway line. The Egyptian players surround the referee. The bench is screaming. The Egyptian manager is demanding a VAR check that never comes. And here is the number that made the Egyptian FA file a formal complaint the next morning. 58 fouls committed by Argentina in this tournament to that point. 3 yellow cards. 3 in the entire competition. Only Norway had a lower ratio, and Norway had not played a knockout game yet. The Argentine center-back pairing had committed a combined 17 fouls without a single caution between them. Angel Di Maria had been booked once. Christian Romero, the man whose game is built on physical challenges, had walked away from a slap-across-the-face incident in the second half without so much as a stern word from the fourth official. Then Argentina scored again. 91st minute. The camera pans to Emiliano Martinez in the Argentine goal, arms out, mocking. The Egyptian bench is on its feet. And the Egyptian manager, in the post-match press conference, said the sentence that broke the internet. Quote, "There seems to have been pressure on the Argentinian side on the referee that has brought about this outcome. I am not convinced by this outcome, and by the way things unfolded in this match. Perhaps they want to lean on Messi to stay in the running." End quote. That is not a fan on Twitter. That is a national team manager on a live international broadcast saying that he believes the World Cup is being steered. And when the Egyptian playmaker Ziad Trezeguet was asked the same question in the mixed zone, he did not soften it. Quote, "The referees favored Argentina. Everyone in the stadium saw it. Everyone at home saw it. The world is unfair, but this competition is supposed to be fair. It was not fair tonight." End quote. That is the game that turned a whisper into a scream. That is the 90 minutes that made the phrase Argentina always gets what Argentina wants the loudest sentence in world football right now. And in the next section, we're going to look at the pattern of numbers underneath it, because when you actually stack the referee stats from this tournament side by side, what happened against Egypt is not the anomaly. It is the trend. Now, let's step away from emotion and go into the numbers. Because if this were just one bad afternoon for one referee, we wouldn't be having this conversation. What turned the Egypt fallout into a global story is that when you actually pull the tournament statistics and lay them side by side with the other favorites, Argentina is not sitting at the edge of the distribution. Argentina is sitting off the chart. Let's start with the headline stat. 58 fouls conceded by Argentina through the group stage and round of 16. 3 yellow cards. 3. That is a foul-to-card ratio of 19.3 to 1. Meaning Argentina, on average, commits a foul every 7.5 minutes of match time and gets booked once every 3 matches. Only Norway is anywhere near that ratio, sitting at 48 fouls to 2 yellow cards, and Norway had not yet played a knockout tie when those numbers were compiled. Every other quarterfinalist in this tournament sits at a foul-to-card ratio between 4 to 1 and 7 to 1. France, 5.2. Brazil, 4.8. Spain, 6.1. Portugal 4.3. Argentina 19.3. That is not variance. That is a different sport being played by the same officials. Now the penalties. This is where the pattern gets historical. In the 2022 World Cup, Argentina were awarded 5 penalties across 7 matches. 5. That was a joint record for a single World Cup edition. Only France in 1998, playing at home, matched it, and France in 1998 had the small advantage of being the host nation, which every serious tournament analyst will tell you is worth roughly a 0.3 goal per match uplift in refereeing decisions historically. Argentina in 2022 were not playing at home. They were playing in Qatar, and they still walked away with a penalty record. In this 2026 tournament, Argentina have already been awarded 3 penalties in 4 matches. 3. Messi has missed 2 of them, which is why the storyline hasn't dominated headlines the way it should. If both of those had gone in, we would be talking about a projected penalty rate that dwarfs anything in modern World Cup history. As it stands, Argentina are averaging 0.75 penalties per match at this tournament. The next closest quarterfinalist? 0.2. To spell that out, Argentina are being awarded penalties at almost 4 times the rate of the second most rewarded team in this competition. Now stack the individual decisions. Against Algeria in the group stage, Messi went into a 50-50 duel with his boot up above the ankle of an Algerian midfielder. Studs on the calf. Studs on the Achilles. Compare that, side by side, with the challenge Jude Bellingham was sent off for against Bosnia in the same tournament. Bellingham, a similar body angle, similar height of contact, no intent to injure, was shown a straight red on the field and had the decision upheld by VAR. Messi did not receive a yellow card. Not a yellow. Play continued. Messi went on to score a hat-trick in that match. And when the tournament disciplinary board reviewed both incidents that same week, only one of them was flagged for further sanction. It was not the Argentine. That is the pattern that makes this conversation different from every other "our team got screwed" complaint in international football. Because "our team got screwed" is what every fan says after every loss. What we are looking at here is a documented, tournament-wide cross-referee, cross-continent statistical divergence between how Argentina are officiated and how everyone else is officiated. And the divergence has been running for 2 consecutive World Cups. Now, before we go into the authority voices condemning this, and there are more than you think from more countries than you think, I want to say something. If this analysis is landing for you, if you're the kind of football fan who wants the numbers behind the noise, and not just the noise, do the channel a real favor and smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps the algorithm push this to more neutral fans who are trying to make sense of what they're seeing on their screens. That's it. No sales pitch. Just a click if the video is earning it. Back to the breakdown. Because the next section is where this stops being one channel's investigation and starts being the professional consensus. Managers, players, retired referees, journalists from 4 different continents, all saying the same thing. And once you hear it stacked in one place, you understand why the Egyptian Federation didn't just file a complaint about one match, they filed one about the entire tournament. Here is where this stops being one Egyptian manager's opinion. Because the moment that Egypt press conference ended, a chorus started that is now impossible to ignore. And what makes this chorus different from every other angry post-match reaction in World Cup history is that it is not coming from one country. It is not coming from one language. It is coming from every serious football conversation on 4 continents at the same time. Start with the Egyptian Federation. They didn't just tweet outrage. They filed a formal written complaint with FIFA the following morning, requesting a full review of the officiating decisions in the Argentina match and asking specifically for the appointment protocol of the referee crew to be made public. That is a federation, not a fan account going on the record. That is a document with a case number. Then the players. Ziad Trezeguet, the Egyptian playmaker, in the mixed zone. Quote, "The referees favored Argentina. Everyone in the stadium saw it. Everyone at home saw it. The world is unfair, but this competition is supposed to be fair." End quote. That is a professional footballer on camera calling the World Cup unfair. That does not happen. Players are drilled from academy age to not say this, because saying this ends your relationship with FIFA. Trezeguet said it anyway, which tells you what the mood inside the Egyptian dressing room was. Then the manager. Same press conference. Quote, "I don't want to watch this World Cup anymore. Life is unfair. The world is unfair." Okay, but why isn't there any fairness in sports? Perhaps they want to lean on Messi to stay in the running. In football, there are sometimes external factors that go beyond the technical aspects. The world champions benefited from support at every level. End quote. Read that again. The world champions benefited from support at every level. That is not the referee had a bad game. That is, the system worked for them. That is an accusation directed at the tournament itself. Now go to France, and this is where it gets interesting. Because France have their own unresolved account with Argentina officiating, and the moment the Egypt game ended, French football media lit up. Emmanuel Petit, 1998 World Cup winner, working as a pundit on French television, said on air that what happened to Egypt was, quote, the same story we lived through in Qatar, dressed up in a different jersey. End quote. Kylian Mbappe, who has publicly kept his distance from the 2022 final for 4 years, was asked about it at a press conference the day after the Egypt match and simply said, quote, I have already answered this question in December 2022. End quote. That is a champion of the world telling you he has nothing new to say because nothing has changed. That is louder than a statement. Then the retired officials. This is the layer that surprises people. Because when an Uruguayan former FIFA referee gave an interview to a Montevideo sports outlet in the days after the Egypt match, he did not defend the crew. Quote, the pattern of decisions across the 2 most recent World Cups involving Argentina is statistically abnormal. It is not the job of a referee to explain why. It is the job of FIFA to explain why. And so far, FIFA has not. End quote. That is a former colleague of the men holding the whistle telling you the numbers don't add up. And then the neutral press. Brazilian sports dailies ran editorials framing the tournament as, quote, a messy farewell tour with security detail. South African outlets covering the Egypt match ran the headline, quote, the whistle wore blue and white. A French investigative sports show devoted a full segment to comparing the appointment records of the referees assigned to Argentina matches over the last 2 World Cups and found that 4 of the 6 referees who officiated Argentina's key knockout ties in 2022 and 2026 had been previously flagged in internal UEFA reports for what the show described as inconsistent application of contact fouls. That is not one fan base whining. That is federations, players, managers, retired officials, and investigative sports journalists across 4 continents, in 6 languages, arriving at the same paragraph. Argentina are being officiated differently. The reasons are debated. The pattern is not. And here is the part that Argentine fans will not want to hear next. This is not the first time. This is not the second time. This is the 3rd World Cup in a row where the same accusation has been made by different countries about the same team. And that pattern goes back further than 2022. It goes back to a hand and a stadium and a summer in 1986. If the Egypt match was the moment the accusation went global, the Cape Verde match was the moment it went to the top floor. Because in that match, the most powerful man in world football was caught on camera reacting to a goal against Argentina in a way that would end the career of any junior FIFA employee, and then 30 minutes later walked into a broadcast microphone and confirmed it out of his own mouth. Let's take it in order. Cape Verde, a nation of just over 500,000 people, playing in their first ever knockout round at a senior World Cup, in the group stage of a lifetime, against the reigning world champions. And in the 71st minute, they scored. Cape Verde equalized against Argentina in a World Cup knockout tie. That is a moment that belongs in every football highlight reel ever made. It is the exact kind of history the World Cup exists to produce. The broadcast director, doing what every broadcast director does in that situation, cut to the VIP box. Standard protocol. Show the president. Show the joy. Show the shock of history landing on live television. And the shot they got back was Gianni Infantino, president of FIFA, with his head in his hands. Not surprise. Not admiration. Disappointment. The exact facial expression of a supporter watching his team concede in the final minutes. It was not a still frame taken out of context. It was several seconds of continuous body language at a moment when a neutral head of a sport should have been on his feet applauding a footballing miracle. He was mourning it. That clip was on every timeline in the football world within 10 minutes. Then it got worse. Because after the match, when Infantino was asked about the game in a broadcast interview, he did not defuse. He confirmed, quote, I suffered during this match. End quote. The president of the sport. Suffered. Not, what a beautiful game. Not, what a moment for Cape Verde. Suffered. As if his team had just barely survived. As if he had skin in the outcome. As if the World Cup had a preferred winner, and the preferred winner had come close to being knocked out. Now, in fairness, and this channel has to be honest about this because there's a reasonable defense of Infantino here. Yes, the president of the tournament has a commercial interest in Messi advancing. Yes, the deep run of the most marketable player in the sport is worth hundreds of millions of dollars in projected viewership, sponsorship activation, and post-tournament revenue. That is a real thing. Every tournament administrator on Earth, in every sport, quietly hopes the biggest star goes deep. That part is human. That part is business. But here is where the defense collapses. There is a difference between quietly hoping and publicly confirming. There is a difference between a business preference and a body language performance broadcast into 40 million living rooms. And there is a difference between wanting a marketable narrative and using the phrase, "I suffered," to describe the near elimination of the world champion by a debutante nation whose entire population would fit inside 2 Argentinian stadiums. That is not neutral. That is not administrative. That is a fan reaction from a man whose job is not to be a fan. Now, go back to the match itself, because the reaction only matters if the officiating pattern is there. And it was. Early in the second half, a Cape Verde attacker cleanly won a challenge against Messi in the build-up to a promising counter. Referee blew for a foul on Messi. Free kick to Argentina in a dangerous zone. A few minutes later, an Argentine midfielder handled the ball, clearly and deliberately, to gain possession. Referee stood 2 meters away, looked at the incident, and waved play on. Later, when a Cape Verde attacker was fouled on the edge of the Argentina box in the 89th minute, no free kick was awarded. In the 78th minute, a Christian Romero challenge that would have been a yellow card in 90% of Premier League matches this season went entirely uncautioned. And when an Argentine player went down for treatment inside the box before a Cape Verde corner, the referee stopped the entire restart and waited a full minute for the player to walk back onto the pitch, which is not standard protocol, not a written rule of the game, and not a courtesy any other side in this tournament has received. Cape Verde lost that match 2-1. Their manager did not speak to the press afterwards. He walked out of the stadium in silence. And the president of FIFA went home saying he had suffered. If the Egypt match was the flashpoint and the Cape Verde reaction was the confession, then the France against Morocco appointment was the moment that even neutral tournament administrators looked at each other and asked, out loud on the record, who signed off on this. Here is the situation. France against Morocco. Round of 16. 2 of the most watched national teams on the planet, one of the most anticipated ties of the tournament, and a match with a level of geopolitical, historical, and footballing weight that any senior tournament coordinator would flag as a Category 1 appointment, meaning the officiating crew has to be chosen with maximum caution. The kind of match where the referee's passport is checked twice before the badge is issued. FIFA appointed an all-Argentine crew. Not 3 of 5. Not 4 of 5. All 5. The center referee, both assistants, the 4th official, and the video assistant referee. Every single voice in that officiating team, every single decision-maker on that pitch, and in the VAR booth, held an Argentine passport for a France match in a knockout round of the World Cup that is currently taking place. During a tournament in which the reigning Argentine world champions are still alive in the bracket and could conceivably face France in a later round. Understand what that violates. There is a long-standing, informal but universally observed FIFA protocol that in high-stakes knockout matches, the officiating crew is nationality mixed specifically to eliminate the appearance of bias. Typically, the 3 central officials share a nationality, and the 2 assistants are drawn from a different confederation entirely. This is not a rule anyone has to enforce because the tournament administrators, the referee committees, and the confederations self-police it. Nobody wants an ugly headline. Nobody wants a losing federation to have this bullet in the chamber. And in tie after tie across 3 decades of World Cup football, appointment protocols have been designed with one goal: do not hand any national team an easy conspiracy claim. FIFA handed France a fully loaded conspiracy claim, wrapped in a bow, on international live television. Every one of the 5 officials at that match holds a passport from the country that eliminated France in the last World Cup final under circumstances that half the French football establishment still refuses to accept. The country whose starting goalkeeper mocked Kylian Mbappe at the 2022 award ceremony. The country whose president of the Football Association for years later has still not issued the routine diplomatic sentence, "We respect the way France played." That country supplied every whistle, every flag, every video screen, every headset in a French knockout match. Now, and this is where we have to be careful, because a good analysis stress tests its own argument. You can push back on this framing. And the pushback is fair. When Argentina played Egypt, 3 of the 5 officials in that crew were French. So one could argue, look, the rotation is what it is. Sometimes the crew composition breaks the way it breaks, and if the reciprocity is symmetric across the tournament, then the appearance of bias cancels out. That is a legitimate counterpoint. And the reason it lands is because if Argentina were being officiated by nationals of a rival, then symmetry would in fact hold. That is a real defense of the FIFA appointment desk. But there is a difference. When French officials officiate Argentina, the perception, whether accurate or not, is that the whistles will be balanced or even skeptical toward the Argentine side because of the 2022 residue. When Argentine officials officiate France, the perception is that the whistles will be hostile toward the French side. Both crews might do their jobs professionally. Both crews might make identical calls. But the psychological weight of the appointment is not the same. That asymmetry is exactly what an appointment protocol is designed to prevent. You do not need to prove bias. You only need to prove that the appointment was foreseeable to the observer as biased. That is the entire point of the protocol. And that appointment failed it. France went on to draw that match. The reaction from a French sporting press was extraordinarily muted, which itself is telling, because when a French media landscape known for its combative post-match punditry declines to make a big deal of an all-Argentine crew officiating a French match, you are watching a country that has already decided the fight is not worth having anymore. They have accepted the pattern. They just watch it now. To understand why the 2026 accusations are landing this hard, you have to go back 3.5 years to the 90 minutes of football and the 4 hours of aftermath that fundamentally changed how the neutral football fan feels about the Argentina national team. December 18th, 2022. Lusail Stadium, the final of the World Cup. And what happened between the final whistle and Argentina walking out of the stadium is, for a huge number of football watchers around the world, the exact moment that admiration flipped to something colder. Start with the match itself. Because before we get to the celebrations, Argentina in that final were awarded a first-half penalty for a Ousmane Dembele challenge that, on rewatch, has since been dissected in every French, Belgian, and Dutch football podcast as, at best, extremely light. And that penalty came in a tournament where Argentina were awarded 5 spot kicks across 7 matches, a joint World Cup record shared only with a French side playing on home soil in 1998. Argentina scored twice from penalties in that final. Both were converted. Both were, per FIFA's own subsequent public commentary, correctly given. And both are still argued about in every language football is spoken in. But the match is not what turned the neutrals. What turned the neutrals was what happened after. The Golden Glove ceremony. Emiliano Martinez, awarded the trophy for the best goalkeeper of the tournament, walks up on stage, in front of a global audience of over 1 billion viewers, and makes an obscene gesture with the trophy pointed at his own crotch, on live international television, at the World Cup, directly in front of the FIFA president who had just handed him the award. That is not passion. That is not celebration. That is a professional goalkeeper making a genital gesture on the biggest stage in world sport, and no institutional consequence followed. The dressing room. Video leaks the same evening. Martinez leading the entire Argentina squad in a chant demanding a minute of silence for Kylian Mbappe, who they refer to in the chant as being dead. That chant continues for over a minute. The rest of the squad joins in. Nobody stops it. Nobody edits it out. Somebody uploads it. And within 12 hours, every Mbappe supporter on the planet has seen the exact tone the Argentine dressing room chose to strike about a player who had just scored a hat-trick in a World Cup final at the age of 23. The bus parade in Buenos Aires. Martinez again cradling a baby doll with a photograph of Mbappe's face taped to it, mock-rocking it in front of hundreds of thousands of Argentine supporters on live national broadcast in a country that hours earlier had won the World Championship for the first time in a generation. That is not a private joke. That is a member of the winning squad on the victory bus of a national team, mocking the opponent's best player as an infant in front of the largest sporting parade in South American history. Nicolas Otamendi at the final whistle, flipping off the French substitute bench as he ran past. Argentine supporters in the crowd chanting racial abuse at French players. And in the years since, not one high-profile Argentine footballer has publicly walked back a single incident of that week. Not one. When Mbappe was asked about it in 2023, in 2024, in 2025, and again during this tournament, his answer has been identical every time. A polite nothing, because there is nothing new to say. Nobody apologized. Now here is why that matters for 2026. That week was not just distasteful to French supporters. It was distasteful to neutrals. It was distasteful to fans in Africa, in Asia, in the United States, in Scandinavia. Fans who had spent an entire decade rooting for Messi to finally win a World Cup, and who watched the 24 hours after his coronation and thought, wait, this is who we were rooting for. That is the moment the mood shifted. That is the moment Argentina stopped being a synonym for Messi's redemption story and started becoming a synonym for something a lot uglier. And by the way, if you're here this deep into a 50-minute breakdown, you're the exact viewer this channel exists for. Do the algorithm a real favor and hit subscribe. There is going to be a full companion breakdown on Emiliano Martinez alone dropping next week, and you're not going to want to miss it. Now, let's go further back, because the arrogance reputation did not start in 2022. It started 40 years earlier with a hand in a summer at the Estadio Azteca. The 2022 dressing room did not invent Argentina's reputation. It just modernized it. Because if you actually trace the line of anti-Argentine sentiment in world football, it does not start at Lusail Stadium. It starts almost exactly 4 decades earlier in Mexico City at the Estadio Azteca on the 22nd of June, 1986. And it has been reinforced incident by incident, generation by generation, ever since. The hand of God. World Cup quarterfinal against England. Diego Armando Maradona, in the 51st minute of that match, jumped for a ball with English goalkeeper Peter Shilton and punched it, with his left fist, into the England net. The referee, Ali bin Nasser, did not see it. The linesman did not see it. The goal was given. Maradona ran off celebrating. And in the post-match press conference, when asked directly if he had used his hand, the greatest footballer of his generation looked at the world's cameras and said the ball had been struck, quote, a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. End quote. That is not a language misunderstanding. That is a public admission wrapped in a shrug. And it is the single most replayed piece of football and gamesmanship in the history of the sport. Argentina won that match 2-1. Argentina went on to win the World Cup. And the phrase hand of God became global sporting shorthand for a very specific idea. That the Argentina national team, at the highest level of the sport, will do whatever the rules will allow the referee to miss. Whatever. Because the trophy is worth it, and the punishment for getting caught is not. Now go forward 12 years to Saint-Étienne, France 1998. Round of 16. Argentina against England again. 52nd minute. A young David Beckham is fouled and is lying on the pitch when Diego Simeone, then 28 years old, running past him, delivers what any honest analysis will describe as a light and provocative kick to Beckham's back. Beckham, on the ground, flicks his leg out in retaliation. Contact so minor that in slow motion you can barely see it move Simeone's shorts. Simeone goes down like he has been shot. Rolls. Clutches. Grimaces. Referee runs over. Straight red card to Beckham. England play the rest of the match with 10 men. Argentina win on penalties. England exit the World Cup. 20 years later, in a documentary interview, Diego Simeone, now a decorated manager, was asked about the incident. He smiled. He said, quote, let's just say the referee was very generous with me. End quote. That sentence, delivered with a grin, in front of an English-speaking audience, in a country whose entire footballing generation blames him personally for the exit of the 1998 team, tells you the operating principle. There is no shame about it. There is no denial. There is a slight smirk about having gotten away with it, and there is a total unwillingness to concede that anything wrong happened. Now go back further still. To 1978. Argentina hosted the World Cup while under a military dictatorship whose systematic disappearance program was, by that point, an open international scandal. In the second group stage, Argentina needed to beat Peru by 4 clear goals to reach the final ahead of Brazil on goal difference. Peru had one of the strongest defensive records in the tournament. Peru's starting goalkeeper had a Peruvian mother and an Argentine father. Argentina beat Peru 6-0. 6. The Peruvian Federation has spent the 4.5 decades since batting away persistent, credible, documented allegations that grain shipments, financial arrangements, and political pressure from the Argentine junta were used to influence the outcome of that match. The allegations have never been fully proven and have never been fully disproven. And every serious football historian who has written about the 1978 tournament, including several from within Argentina, has arrived at the same paragraph. The result is impossible to look at without asking a question that ordinary football matches do not force you to ask. Argentina won that World Cup on home soil. Argentina lifted the trophy in front of the generals who had ordered the disappearances. And that image of that trophy, held aloft in that stadium, is the founding image of a reputation that has now compounded across 5 decades. That whenever Argentina reached the summit of world football, something about the road there does not sit right. That is the reputation the 2022 dressing room walked into. That is the reputation the 2026 refereeing pattern is now feeding. It is not new, is not invented by jealous rival fan bases, is a footballing tradition Argentina themselves have built, incident by incident, decade by decade, and refuse to renounce. The 2022 final and the historical incidents are the ones everyone remembers. But between 1986 and today, there is an entire dossier of smaller, more recent scandals that individually would fade from memory and collectively explain exactly why the football world's patience with this national team is finished. Let's stack them because when you see them in one place, the pattern stops being deniable. November 2022. Group stage, Qatar. Argentina lose their opening match to Saudi Arabia, and in the mixed zone, an Argentine journalist openly asks the Argentine squad whether the entire tournament is already over. Angel Di Maria responds by walking off camera without answering. That footage never leaves South American media, but it establishes the tone that the Argentine dressing room is about to bring for the rest of the tournament. Zero grace under pressure. Zero deflection. Quarterfinal, Qatar 2022. Argentina against the Netherlands. Full-time whistle. A brawl erupts on the pitch that has to be broken up by 3 separate substitutes and both benches. Referee Antonio Matulajas distributes 18 yellow cards, still a World Cup single-match record. Post-match, Lionel Messi, walking past a Dutch television camera, refers to his Dutch opponent on camera on live global broadcast as, quote, Bobo. That is a national team captain in the middle of the World Cup calling an opposing player a fool during an active interview. The clip goes viral in every language on the internet. Messi has never publicly walked it back. Summer 2024. Copa America final, played in the United States. Argentina against Colombia at Hard Rock Stadium. The match starts 80 minutes late because Colombian fans without tickets have overwhelmed the security perimeter, and dozens of ticket-holding fans are injured or crushed in the entry corridors. The atmosphere is chaotic. Argentina win 1-0 in extra time. That is where the sporting story ends and the ugliness begins. On the team bus, on the return journey to the hotel, Enzo Fernandez, star Argentine midfielder, an active Chelsea player, streams live on his own social media a squad chant that includes explicitly racist references to the French national team's players of African descent. The clip is on every French timeline within 20 minutes. The French Football Federation announces it will file a formal complaint with FIFA. Chelsea Football Club, Fernandez's club employer, opens an internal disciplinary process. The French Players' Union publicly demands sanctions. FIFA opens an investigation. Enzo Fernandez issues a written apology from his club. Not one member of the Argentine national team publicly co-signs that apology. Not one. Not the captain. Not the manager. Not the federation president. The response from Argentine football to a full-blown international racism scandal involving one of their own players is silence. Late 2024, ongoing into 2025. World Cup qualifiers. Argentina against Chile. The pre-match handshake ceremony includes an incident where 2 Argentine players refuse the handshake of the Chilean captain. Chilean media covers it as a diplomatic provocation. Argentine media covers it as banter. Multiple sub-15 and sub-17 age group South American tournaments in the same period produce Argentine coaching staff being cited for on-field conduct incidents in official CONMEBOL disciplinary reports. Spring 2025. The Emiliano Martinez saucepan incident. During a match with Argentina, Martinez waves an unofficial trophy in the shape of a cooking pot at opposition supporters, referencing an internal Argentine meme that mocks visiting nations. Multiple federations file informal complaints. FIFA declines to sanction. June 2026. The current tournament. Aside from the Egypt and Cape Verde matches we have already broken down, Argentine supporters in the stands of 2 group stage matches are photographed unfurling banners with imagery targeting Kylian Mbappe 3.5 years after the Qatar final. In the mixed zone after the Algeria group match, Rodrigo de Paul, when asked whether the Argentina squad has learned any lesson about international conduct since 2022, laughs on camera and does not answer. That is the Dossier. 12 significant incidents across 5 years, across 3 continents, involving federations from 4 nations formally filing complaints, and involving zero public accountability from within the Argentine national team institutional structure. When people say, everybody hates Argentina, they are not talking about the football. They are talking about that list. And every serious Argentine journalist writing outside of the domestic media bubble now openly admits that the reputation has calcified into something structural. Not a bad week. Not a bad tournament. A brand. Now, the video does something most breakdowns of this topic will not do. Because if this channel is going to stack 9 blocks of accusation, statistics, and cumulative scandals against Argentina, it is going to spend the next 5 minutes making the honest, technical, unironic case for them. Because it exists, it is stronger than most people admit, and if we skip it, this video is just noise dressed as analysis. Start with the football. The actual football on the pitch, stripped of everything around it. This Argentina generation is one of the greatest technical peaks South American football has ever produced. And greatest technical peak is not a phrase used lightly here. Lionel Messi, Angel Di Maria, Rodrigo de Paul, Alexis McAllister, Enzo Fernandez, Julian Alvarez, Lautaro Martinez, and a defensive spine anchored by Christian Romero and Nicolas Otamendi. That is not a squad that squeaks through World Cups because of whistles. That is a squad that produced the goal Di Maria scored in the 2022 final, a 15-pass build-up starting from the goalkeeper's boots and ending with a strike, so technically clean it is now a set-piece drill in professional academies. That is a squad that has now won a Copa America in 2021, a World Cup in 2022, and a Copa America in 2024, 3 consecutive senior international tournaments across 3.5 years, at a level of consistency only 2 other national teams in the entire history of the sport have ever managed. The Spain of 2008 to 2012, and the West Germany of 1972 to 1974. That is the company they are keeping. That is not luck. That is not favors. That is a generational core of world-class footballers playing world-class football together for 6 years straight. Now the tactical layer. Lionel Scaloni, when he took over the Argentine national team in 2018, was 39 years old and had 0 senior head coaching experience. 0. He was widely dismissed inside Argentine football media as an underqualified compromise appointment. He proceeded to build one of the most cohesive, defensively disciplined, transitionally efficient international sides of the modern era. Argentina under Scaloni play a low-block, counter-oriented, midfield-crowded system that requires an absurd amount of tactical intelligence from every player on the pitch. That system is why they close out matches at rates the rest of the international game cannot match. That is coaching. That is preparation. That is training ground detail. It is not a whistle. Now the historical context, and this is the argument most non-Argentine fans miss. Because before 2021, Argentina had lost 4 consecutive major international finals, Copa America 2015, Copa America Centenario 2016, and the 2014 World Cup final against Germany. In the 14 years between winning the 1993 Copa America and winning the 2021 Copa America, Argentina lifted 0 senior trophies. 0. In a country whose entire national identity is fused with football success. That is 28 years of ambient failure, dressing room turnover, tactical experiments, and press vilification. When people talk about the arrogance of the 2022 dressing room, they miss that the older half of that squad had spent an entire adult career being told they were losers who could not deliver for the shirt. When that pressure finally lifts, at Lusail Stadium in 2022, what comes out is not always graceful. But it is human, and is understandable in a way that a purely moral framing refuses to acknowledge. Now, the gamesmanship reputation argument, because this is the point where the case for Argentina is strongest. Italy in the 1980s and 90s built European Cup empires on catenaccio and choreographed diving. Germany won a World Cup in 2014 running up a 7-0 scoreline on a host nation in a semi-final still referenced as a public humiliation. Uruguay's Luis Suarez beat an opponent at a World Cup and served a domestic reintegration campaign like nothing had happened. Brazil have been raising diving as an art form since Pelé's era. Every serial-winning football nation in the modern era has an image problem that its rivals point at. Argentina's is not qualitatively worse. It is just the current one. the one that is on your timeline this month. And a lot of the moral outrage about it, if you are honest, is calibrated by who is winning right now, not by an absolute standard applied consistently across nations. That is the honest defense. It is not weak. It is not a straw man. It is the real argument made at full strength on this Argentina squad's behalf. And any anti-Argentina take that does not reckon with those 5 paragraphs is intellectually incomplete. But, everything in the last block is true. The talent is real. The coaching is real. The trophies are earned. The historical context of Argentine footballing pain is real. The gamesmanship reputation is not qualitatively unique in the history of the sport. All of that is true, and none of it changes the conclusion of this video. Because the problem with the 2026 Argentina is not that they win. The problem is not that they are good. The problem is not that they play with an edge. The problem is what they have chosen to do with all of those things off the pitch, cumulatively for 5 straight years, in front of a global audience that has stopped extending them the benefit of the doubt. Every great winning nation in the modern era eventually earns the world's grudging respect through the quality of its behavior after the trophy. Germany won a World Cup in 2014 by scoring 7 against a host nation and immediately spent the next decade cultivating a public image of technical humility, academy investment, and diplomatic silence. Spain won the 2010 World Cup and then, in the 15 years since, produced a national team culture that opponents openly describe as classy. France won 2 World Cups in 20 years, and whatever you think of Didier Deschamps, has never once been accused as a squad of publicly ridiculing an opponent's dead grandmother, an opponent's ethnicity, or an opponent's mother tongue in a squad champ broadcast live on the internet. Every serial winning nation in the modern era has done the work of turning triumph into a version of dignity. Argentina, uniquely in the last 4 years, has done the opposite. They have chosen mockery on the medal ceremony stage. They have chosen a chant about a 23-year-old opponent being dead. They have chosen not 1 but 2 separate documented incidents of racist squad singing against the same opposing nation 3.5 years apart. They have chosen 0 public accountability from within the federation for either incident. They have chosen to enter this 2026 tournament with the same dressing room culture, the same public spokespersons, and the same manager giving the same non-answers to the same questions, and they have layered on top of that a statistical refereeing pattern that stretches credulity so far that the Egyptian Football Association filed a formal complaint the morning after their exit. That is a set of choices. Not luck. Choices. And when a national team makes that set of choices for 5 years running, the neutral fan is entitled, is in fact required, to update their opinion. That is what has happened. The neutral fan has updated the opinion. The 2022 admiration is gone. The 2010s pity for Messi and his repeated finals losses is gone. The romantic reading of Argentina as the country that loves football more than anyone is gone. And what is left at this tournament is a national side walking into stadiums where half the crowd is neutral and being met with a silence that is loud. A silence that is the sound of 100,000 people on 4 continents watching in real time and thinking, we would rather almost anyone else win this. That is why the Egypt whistles matter. That is why the Cape Verde reaction from Infantino matters. That is why the France appointment matters. Not because any one of those incidents on its own proves anything. Not because there is a smoke-filled room in Zurich deciding the outcome, but because Argentina, over 5 years, has exhausted every reservoir of goodwill a football nation gets to draw on. And when football nation has spent all of that credit, every subsequent decision, every soft penalty, every unpunished stud, every VAR overturn, every appointment sheet, reads as a favor even when it is not. That is the trap Argentina has walked into. And Argentine fans who blame the rest of the world for reading their team this way are missing the point. The reading is what the choice is earned. You cannot win the way this squad has won, celebrate the way this squad has celebrated, apologize the way this squad has refused to apologize, and then demand that the rest of the football world evaluate every whistle with a neutral mind. You have loaded the whistle. Every whistle, every match, every tournament from here until the end of this generation. And whatever happens in the semifinal, whatever happens in the final, whether Argentina lift a 2nd consecutive World Cup or crash out on penalties to Switzerland this weekend, that reading of your team is now locked in. Because the football world made a decision, and the football world is not planning to unmake it. So we are back at the question we opened this video with. Why does everybody hate Argentina? And after 50 minutes of statistics, quotes, footage breakdowns, 40-year historical patterns, and the honest defense of the squad, this channel is going to do what every serious analysis at this point is supposed to do. Is going to hand the question back to you. Because after 11 blocks of stacked evidence, the answer is not one that any single narrator gets to hand down. The answer is one you now have enough information to construct for yourself. And this channel would rather you argue with the person next to you about it than take a verdict handed to you by a video. Here is what we know, and here is what we do not know. We know that Argentina, across 2 consecutive World Cups, has been officiated at a statistical rate that diverges from every other elite nation in the tournament. We know that the numbers have been the numbers for 5 straight years. We know that the president of FIFA was captured on camera, reacting to a Cape Verde goal against Argentina like a suffering supporter, and then confirmed it in his own words in a broadcast interview. We know that the appointment sheet for a France knockout match consisted of 5 Argentine passports, and no one at FIFA blinked. We know that the Egypt Football Association filed a formal complaint that has not been meaningfully answered. We know that the 2022 dressing room, the 2024 team bus, and the 2026 press box have produced an unbroken line of incidents that no other champion nation in modern football history has matched. And we know that this squad on the pitch is genuinely, technically, tactically world-class in a way that most teams accused of getting favors are not. What we do not know is whether any of this is coordinated. We do not know whether FIFA has an institutional preference. We do not know whether the referees are being nudged or whether they are simply, subconsciously, over years of high-profile assignments, drifting toward the reputational safety of not making the call that ends Messi's tournament. We do not know whether the Argentina squad, if handed a mirror by someone they trusted, would recognize how the last 5 years look from the outside. We do not know if any of this changes after the 2026 tournament ends, when this generational core finally starts to retire and a new group of Argentine players inherits a shirt with all of this history sewn into it. Those are the questions that the next decade of football is going to answer, not this video. And that is why the take-home is not a verdict. The take-home is a choice. You get to decide what you do with the pattern. You get to decide whether the boos in the stadium the next time Argentina walk out are a scandal or an earned welcome. You get to decide whether the 2022 trophy sits differently on the shelf now than it did 3 years ago. And you get to decide whether, when the referee blows the next contested whistle in favor of this team, the reasonable reading is bad luck for the other side or the outcome of a benefit of the doubt reservoir that Argentina has drained down to 0. So let's do this properly. 3 questions. Real answers. In the comments. Do not scroll past them. This channel actually reads them. Question 1. Is the hate for Argentina earned, or is it dressed up jealousy? Give a real answer. Not a little of both. Pick a side. If it is earned, tell us which specific incident from this video sealed it for you. If it is jealousy, tell us which piece of the analysis you rejected. Question 2. If Argentina lift a 2nd consecutive World Cup this month, does that quiet the reputation because winners eventually get respected, or does it make everything worse because the pattern completes? Which one? Say why. Question 3. Would you rather see Argentina reach the final against France in a rematch of 2022, or would you rather see them crash out to Switzerland this weekend? Be honest. There is no wrong answer, and there is a lot the answer says about you. Drop your takes below. And while you are down there, if this breakdown earned it, hit the like button, smash that subscribe button, and ring the bell, because whatever happens to Argentina in the next 10 days, this channel is going to be on it match by match, with the same depth, the same receipts, and the same willingness to actually stress test the narrative both ways. The France against Morocco breakdown drops tomorrow. The Emiliano Martinez standalone drops early next week. You are not going to want to miss either. Thank you for staying to the end. See you in the next one.